So the question has come up about whether you can borrow from a 401k before or during your Chapter 7 or Chapter 13 bankruptcy. And note, this is not going to be me discussing the wisdom, tax implications, etc., of borrowing from your 401k. This is purely about the bankruptcy mechanics. So let's tackle these one by one. First, liquidating before you file Chapter 7. That almost never makes sense. Pretty much the only reason I could see someone liquidating from their 401k prior to filing Chapter 7 would be just to avoid filing Chapter 7 outright. For example, maybe getting current to on your mortgage. Then maybe you don't even need a bankruptcy. So it rarely will make sense. However, if you were to do it and then file Chapter 7, you would be converting that 401k money to a liquid asset in the form of cash, which could be a problem because you're converting an exempt asset to a non-exempt asset that might lead to a liquidation problem. Now let's talk about you filed Chapter 7 and now you're liquidating. This should not be a problem in the context that the 401k is exempt when you file, so you're simply taking an exempt asset after you file, which is not in theory problematic. But the bigger picture question is, why are you doing it? You have the automatic stay in place, so it's protecting you from your creditors. So really, what is so urgent? Chapter 7 typically lasts about 4 months, typically. So what is so urgent about the situation that you are in Chapter 7, probably have the automatic stay in place, and are borrowing from a 401k? That usually doesn't make sense. Now let's turn to Chapter 13, liquidating before Chapter 13. That also doesn't seem to make much sense for pretty much the same reason it didn't make sense in a Chapter 7. You're liquidating the asset to, why are you doing it? Are you trying to get current on your mortgage? Well, then why do you need a Chapter 13? So if you're taking enough cash so that you're getting current, let's say on a secured asset like a house or a car, that might be a reason to do it, but that doesn't then explain why you then need to, after doing it, still file the Chapter 13. So rarely would that make sense. Now, liquidating after you file Chapter 13 or during your Chapter 13 case, this is the one that comes up the most. And this one is very district specific, fact specific. So your particular district you file your bankruptcy in is going to have perhaps a different protocol than another district. But most likely, your district is going to require that you, in the middle of a Chapter 13, when you liquidate a 401k, that you get the court approval beforehand. So, because they want to know exactly what it is you need it for. You are supposed to be paying for your Chapter 13 with regular monthly income, consistent monthly cash flow, and borrowing from a 401k would not be that. So they're going to want to know beforehand. Now, what happens, as I see a lot of times, where people borrow from the 401k and then they bring it to the court's attention or their attorney's attention, then you're presumably going to need a motion to ratify it, and the court could approve it after the fact. But the greater picture question, and what the court really is going to want to know, what the judge is going to want to know, is, why are you doing it? You're supposed to be paying for this with regular monthly income. 401k is really a one-time withdrawal. So if you say got behind on your mortgage because you're not making enough income, yes, maybe your 401k can get you current through a liquidation, but then what's going to happen next month or the following month? So the real issue you should be thinking about if you're trying to liquidate from a 401k during a Chapter 13 is this really solving my big picture problem? Maybe I can't afford this Chapter 13. Maybe it should be dismissed. Or maybe I should be converting over to Chapter 7. It's not to say that you definitely would, but those are the things you should be considering when you're talking about borrowing from a 401k in the middle of a Chapter 13 bankruptcy.